Hey everybody, welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown. I'm here today with Clint Harris from Nomad Capital. Guys, in dental right now, I can't go to a dental event without somebody pitching real estate syndication. Every event I go to, there's at least one speaker on the list who is pitching investing in real estate hands off, or be an investor, not a landlord, or something like that. And it's usually very focused around large unit quantity rental properties, multifamily homes, that kind of thing. And we just had a scandal in our industry with somebody who made off with a bunch of money, who we a lot of us have seen at a lot of the events, who's a former dentist. And there's a lot of questions around this space. It's something that's very prevalent in our space right now. And Clint's with us, and Clint does a different type of real estate syndication that revolves around converting old Kmart's, big box stores, into climatized, really good storage. And that's kind of the direction he goes with syndication. And I want to have Clint on for two reasons. One, I think his product is very different than everything being pitched in the marketplace right now. It's something I believe in. Here at Dental Unfiltered, we don't have sponsorships, so it's something we believe in. And when I researched Nomad Capital, and I've met with Clint a bunch of times, and I know other people that have invested with him, his investment is really intriguing. It's pretty awesome, and it's very different than everything else in the marketplace. And two, I wanted him to come on to kind of tell us, like, what are the questions you should ask when you're looking at syndication, and kind of general knowledge, so you guys, as white coat professionals who are out there working, can have a basic knowledge of how to have these conversations. So Clint, Clint's on today. So Clint, first, tell us, you worked in cardiology before and made the switch over to the real estate syndication side and managing funds. What prompted you wanting to make that change? Like, how did this whole thing come about?
Yeah, and thanks, Matt, for having me on. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate that. Yeah, exactly right. Like I had a 16-year career in medical sales, implanting pacemakers and defibrillators. A lot of nights and weekends on call. As you can imagine, heart problems are not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It's kind of a young man's game. And so starting out in medical sales, it didn't take me long to realize that it's a young man's game that can wear you down, and it has a high ceiling in terms of income, right? I was in the lab implanting pacemakers and defibrillators and making a great living. But if you ever want an off ramp from that lifestyle, you really have to create it for yourself. These days, I feel like, at least for the vast majority of my generation, people have lost the ability to save their way to retirement, right? Our parents had pensions and 401ks and Social Security, and it's not going to be that way for us. So I believe that if you want something different, then you can't just play defense. You have to play offense. So that started my journey as to how I was going to create an off ramp from that lifestyle. I started with single family homes, and then multifamily, and then Airbnb properties. And eventually I found self storage. And syndication is really just a model to how do you scale and take on projects where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts? How do you get a small group of people together to raise capital to take on whatever it may be? And syndication can be, like you said, the 800-pound gorilla is always multifamily apartment complexes, but it can be self-storage, it can be ATMs, it can be vineyards, it can be gas and oil exploration. It's pretty much anything that you want. So I was implanting pacemakers and defibrillators, and in 2020, my partners and I bought an old Kmart building in Reidsville, North Carolina, that had been empty for 10 or 12 years. We bought the building for 1.5 million. We put 2.5 into it. We converted it to a drive-through climate-controlled self-storage facility. It's 87,000 square feet, converted to around 66,000 net rentable. And as a stabilized self-storage facility, it appraised for 9 million. And we're like, oh, okay. I had done this before with small multifamily properties, converting them to Airbnbs. So I understood the idea of asset class conversion, changing the formula by which the asset is valued. And then our model is we take these nasty old big box retail buildings, when we convert them to a different asset class, changes the formula by which they're valued, and the asset shoots up, right, through forced appreciation. So we did a Kmart, then another Kmart, then 2 or 3 more projects. And then eventually I left my career in medical sales in November of 2022. We're full-time syndicators. I'm one of the 4 general partners with Nomad Capital. We have 16 employees. We're currently sitting at 150 million in assets under management at stabilization, looking to get to 500 million over the next 4 to 5 years and $1 billion in 10.
Nice. So, you recognize, the asset change and classification it's like literally taking object A and changing the label or what it really is, and then when it becomes object B, the value is just higher, right?
Nailed
And
it.
it's a great place to create new equity because you're really showing it to a new audience that sees it in a different light, right? So you moved into there from medical sales, and I know that you've been on Mark Costas's podcast, and I know that we're both speaking. I think we're both going to be attending Dental Podfest in a couple weeks,
That's
and
right.
you're starting to show up. You're starting to show up more now in the dental space, and I know that you find that dentists are really good investors for this asset class. And I would like to explain why you believe this is really good for dentists and why that you think you think it's a good asset class for them. A little why that was attractive to you to actually approach dentists as your investors.
Yeah, so there's a couple key points here, and I don't, I know who your listener base is. Here's the difference in your listener base and who we're talking to. They're all part of the white coat community, but compared to the group that I started out with and spent 16 years of my career with, most of the cardiology I worked with, predominantly cardiologists, interventionalists, electrophysiologists mostly, but also pulmonologists, ER doctors, neurology because of atrial fibrillation and stroke risk and blah blah blah. But most of them being hospital employed, right? So there's a handful of private practice cardiologists out there that are that really unique blend of being a great doctor, but also having great business acumen because they're small business owners and they understand how that works. The vast majority of the people that I work with in my career were hospital employees, RVU based, and they're really good at their job. They're fantastic about taking care of their patients, but there's a large educational hurdle when a lot of those people, we all know you have to have three things to have success in real estate investing. It's time, it's experience, and it's money. Well, most of those guys have money, but they don't have experience, and they also don't have time. Without time, you can't go get experience in real estate. And let's be honest, their time is worth more than that, right? Why would you go learn how to do this stuff yourself when you got such a high ceiling, right?
Yeah, their minutes are expensive minutes.
I find dentists, significantly larger population of that white coat community are, they have the business acumen, they're small business minded. And so it's a much, the conversation cuts to the heart of it a lot quicker than the education that has to happen with a lot of the hospital owned employees that I worked with in the past. And so because of that, syndication as a whole, I find that the dental community is something that as they're farther along in their practice and their success, their time becomes worth more than anything else, right? So the idea of finding a partner where they have capital, they can partner with somebody else, it doesn't take up any of their time, and together they can have success greater than what they could accomplish on their own because their time is worth too much to learn how to go take an old Kmart building and convert it into storage. I find that it's a pretty happy marriage there. And a lot of times from the educational standpoint, it just clicks. And in my mind, I don't ever want to approach what I'm doing is like, the reason I had success in medical sales is because I was implanting pacemakers and defibrillators. My job is not to sell you on putting my device in your patients. My device is to educate on this is the way the technology works. This is what I have available. It's your job to make the decision which product is right for your patient, right? So they're going to look at all the companies, all the products that's out there, and they're going to look at the needs for their patient. They're going to make the right decision. Same thing here. My job is to educate. And I don't really care if people invest with us or not. If it's not the right fit for you, then please don't, because I'm the one that's got to have that conversation 2 or 3 years down the road anyway. I do believe, I think that most, especially white coat physicians and dentists, should be looking at self-storage because I think there's a lot of really strong benefits there that are worth being part of somebody's portfolio. But outside of that, I think syndication as a whole, it is a tricky space because there are some bad actors in that space, as you mentioned. I think the important thing is like, don't fall in love with a deal. Your job is to find an operator or group of operators that share your core beliefs about, what you want for your life, what you want for your family, for your cash flow, for your timeline, and go from there, right? I just think it's not a silver bullet. It's just a tool, right? But I think it's a tool that everyone should have in your tool belt if you're at the point in your career where you have capital, but your most valuable component that you have in your life is your time, right? And you want to look at how you're spending your time with your spouse, your partner, your kids, or pursuing whatever it may be. I call it independence of purpose, right? I built up two different real estate portfolios the wrong way, single family homes and then small multifamily properties we converted to Airbnbs. I did it just chasing cash flow. And when I replaced my income from surgical sales, I realized that I did it wrong because I still had to have my phone on me. I was still basically on call. I had a property management company that managed my 14 Airbnbs plus another 75. And I realized we're not really all just after financial independence. What we really want is financial, time, and location independence together. Those three things together create an independence of purpose. That's where you go where you want, when you want, do what you want, you pursue whatever's important for you and your family and your life. That's the reason the company's called Nomad Capital. A nomad is somebody that goes where they want, when they want, does what they want. Our core belief is that right now we have opportunity, unlike the world's ever seen, to network, to connect, just like you and I are doing now, and to build a portfolio of commercial assets where you're breaking the cycle of trading your time for money. That's the key. And that's why I think syndication as a whole should be a tool that everybody is at least aware of.
What's really interesting for me is I talk to dentists every day, and one of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's a great book, right? And in there he says that your wealth building years are 35 to 45, right? And think about the timeline of a dentist. You get out of school, you work as an associate for a few years, you buy your own practice, you're in debt, you start digging yourself out of debt, and you wake up and you're in your 40s, and you're, let's say, 3/4 of the way out of debt. All of a sudden, you're positive cash flow, personally, probably a few $100,000 a year by then. And the question becomes, that crossroad right there, when it all comes together, is what do I do now with this, right? That's the question. And I talk to this all the time, and they're like, hey man, a lot of times they start buying other practices, which for some docs is really good, for some docs isn't a good idea. And they're trying to find out, where do I put this money? Because I'm buying things, I'm living good, but I'm being a little irresponsible. I should have a plan and a strategy for this money. And I think a lot of times they still have, say, 10 or 15 years left in working in the chair in the operatory, right? And like you said, their time is worth a lot, right? Like they don't want to like distract themselves with this other project. I think syndication is a great place to go find a place to put that money. You're still in the asset class of real estate, and you're insulated by it becoming a time suck and a stress suck of your phone going off because the water heater broke, right? So I mean, the reality is that a lot of dentists are like, I want to do less dentistry and be with my family, right? So let's say I'm doing 4 clinical days a week. I want to go down to 3 so I can spend 4 days a week with my family. What they're not saying is, hey, I'm at 4 clinical days a week or 5. I want to go down to 3 so I can take 2 days a week and add more stress to my life managing my properties, right? They're not saying that, right? They're saying that I want freedom. Like you said, they want freedom of movement, freedom of cash flow. And like you're saying, Nomad Capital is that. So a lot of times what's really pitched in our marketplace is real estate syndication in the form of multifamily of some sort, apartment buildings, whatever it is, right? What is so on a return level first? On a return level first, what makes the converting big box stores to self storage a little bit more attractive than the normal real estate syndication?
Matt, we're about to jump into part of the conversation that, in terms of my ability to just provide value to the listeners,
Yeah.
This is really important. And this is not going to be necessarily a pitch about what we do, but there's something really, really key about syndication where it's not apples to apples. You just mentioned the challenge of trading time for money, right?
Yeah.
Your physicians are trading their time in the office for money so that they can go live their life. And that time is more valuable than anything else. That comes into play when you look at syndications as well. Like, let's take the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is a multifamily apartment syndication. Anytime you drive by a large apartment complex or a hotel or anything like that, very rarely is it an individual owner. It is more than likely a group of people that have rolled money together as a syndication to buy that. And the traditional syndication model is this. You buy a C or a B class apartment complex, and you're going to put granite countertops, stainless steel, LVP flooring. You're going to make it a little bit nicer. You jack up the rents on everybody. Everybody that moves out, you renovate their units first. Over time, over a 1 or 2 year period, you move everybody else out. You fix up all the units. As a result, you're able to increase the rents, the net operating income goes up, and the value of the overall property goes up by 30-35%. And after that, you sell the property, everybody gets a payday, the limited partners get a cut, the general partners get a cut, and everybody's made money. And that's great. But you're still trading time for money. At the end of the day, with that model, you are a glorified house flipper. And I'm not here to poo-poo on anybody's strategy. If you're a house flipper, a real estate agent, or a real estate wholesaler, or a syndicator flipping large multifamily properties, the day you stop working is the day that you stop getting paid, right? That's it. You're ultimately still trading time for money. And once you get paid out from a deal, you have to turn around and go find another deal, or else that's the end of the train, right? The reason that we like the self-storage asset class conversion is we specifically wanted to focus on breaking the cycle of trading time for money. And so here's how we did this. There's other ways that people did it. Matt, if you and I went and built a self-storage facility from the ground up right now, it's going to cost us, and we're in the Southeast, by the way, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Georgia. So in the Southeast Sun Belt with the exclusion of Florida because of insurance costs, you're going to spend around $120 a square foot to build the facility, plus the cost of the land. And it's going to take you about 3 years to do the entitlement, permitting, engineering, and everything else. Our model is we want to move into small secondary and tertiary towns across the Southeast. I want to buy the old Kmart building that's been empty for 10 or 12 years that we're not buying on a cap rate. We're buying it based upon what it's worth, what someone's willing to pay for it. It's been sitting empty for a decade. There's holes in the roof. There's water leaks. The town is just ready for somebody to do something with it. So we're buying this for a fraction of the replacement cost. And it's kind of like when you flip a house, you don't make your money when you sell it or renovate it. You made your money when it smelled like dogs and cats and you bought it dirt cheap. Over the last 3.5 years, we've bought and converted 2 Kmarts, 3 warehouses, 2 textile mills, a grocery store, an old soda bottling facility. Right now we have a boot factory and a carpet factory under construction. Across that portfolio, for the cost of the building, the land, the construction, everything, on the day that we open it as a climate-controlled storage, we're averaged just under $65 a square foot, and it averages 12 months from the time we close on the property to the time we open the door. So it's about half the cost of new development, and it includes the cost of the land, and it's in about a third of the time frame. And the reason we can do that is because we are the general contractors. We build it out ourselves. All that sounds cool, but that's not the important part. Here's the important part for your listeners. What that means is, average deal for us is we're buying a building for a couple million. We'll put $2 to $3 million into it. We'll be into the whole project for $4 to $6 million. And as a stabilized climate controlled self-storage facility, it's usually appraising in the 13 to 17 million range once it's full. Now, it's going to take us a year to build it out. It's going to take us 2 years to fill it up to the point of being cash flow positive. But once that property is stabilized and it's landing in the 13 to 17 million range, depending on the market and the price per square in the area, what that means is at stabilization, we're usually landing around 40% loan to value, which means we don't have to liquidate the asset for everybody to get a payday. This is the key. So if everybody that invests into one of our projects, we stabilize that project, we're going to land in the 38 to 40% loan to value range. Once it's full, we will do a cash out refinance to 55 or 60% loan to value, always with fixed rate debt, never variable rate debt. That allows us to pull out a large ball of wealth to pay out all the investors. We're trying to do the best we can to double everybody's money tax-free in 5 years or less. Here's the way we do that. When we pay everybody out by way of refinance, it's non-taxable. It's just like if you paid your house off.
It's a non-taxable event.
Exactly. There's no capital gain, right? If you buy a house for 300 grand and then 10 years later it's worth 600 grand and you're going to refinance it at 75% loan to value, you can pull out a huge chunk of cash and pay no taxes on that. It's your property. You just refinance something you already own. So same model. We buy these buildings for dirt cheap. We do the construction ourselves. We manage them ourselves. The value shoots up. And the key is we don't have to sell it for everybody to get paid. When we do the refinance, everybody gets a payout. It's non-taxable. Everybody stays in the deal. The investors stay in on that. We continue to get cash flow moving forward. And then they're able to take that capital and sure, you can go buy a boat, go buy a Porsche, whatever you want. We think there's a really good chance most of those investors are going to reinvest with us on the next deal. You do that 3, 4, 5 times, you're going to get relatively strong short-term returns, but you're also going to get that, what we call an infinite return that just continues to pay out as long as we own the property. My partner built his first self-storage facility in 2006, and we still own it. We've never sold anything that we've syndicated. We're at 150 million in management. The key is not just like the next project. It's how do you recapitalize and do the project after that, and the project after that, and after that. And that's how we're at 150 million and scaling. The key is breaking the cycle where the operator and the investors don't have to trade their time for money, where when they stop, everybody's done getting paid. That's the key. Is how do you keep it and let it keep cash flowing?
I have a question. So I know on the real estate, the normal multifamily home side, there is the tax benefit of cost segregation analysis. So on the doing the Kmart's and doing this, is there a yearly tax benefit for depreciation or anything like that for the investors?
That is a veteran question, Matt. Yes, there is. And there's a little bit of a hurdle there, and here's how it works. And I want to talk about this from an educational standpoint, because this is so much bigger than just Nomad and what we're doing.
Yeah.
Self-storage overall does very well from a depreciation standpoint. You've got a community of people that are high income earners. Obviously, depreciation is a large part of it. I've got a lot of guys out there that are trying to get the rep status for their spouse, like the real estate professional status, so that they can take those active losses. Within storage, typically it does very, very well from a depreciation standpoint. Because we are converting these old vacant big box retail buildings and mills, we have to do the conversion and then get the certificate of occupancy as a new facility, right? The day that we get that CO, we order the cost segregation study, and then we can take the accelerated depreciation. So for instance, if somebody puts in 100 grand, they're usually getting 25 to 35% depreciation. Sometimes it's year one. Like if I close, I've got a large property that we're closing on the first quarter of this year. So we'll have that converted and up and running by the end of the year. So within 2025, we'll do the cost segregation study and we'll take the accelerated depreciation on that. I have another property we closed the last quarter of last year. So obviously, like, we have to go through the conversion process, get that CO, and then take the accelerated depreciation. So for some of those investors, it's going to be on year 2. So it's a reflection of the property. Is it coming in year 1 or year 2? But yes, you're going to get a large chunk of that depreciation up front. Here's how it works. If someone puts money into one of our projects, it's going to take us, they start earning a return from the day that their capital goes in. But keep in mind, we are developers. These are development deals. It's going to take us a year to build it out, sometimes 8 to 10 months, but we're planning on a year. And after that, it's worth a lot more than when we started, but it's empty. So from there, we've got to fill it up, right? So, but as soon as we get that CO, we're taking that accelerated depreciation. So the investors are earning a preferred return, which would be taxable income. As soon as the property becomes cash flowing, they're getting quarterly distributions. The cash flow is obviously taxable. Our goal is to give people a K1 that shows accelerated depreciation is going to offset the preferred return in the cash flow. And then the largest amount that they're getting back is a return of capital plus another big chunk coming by that way of refinance. Our goal is it used to be to try to double everybody's money in 5 years or less. Now it's more like a 1.8 to 1.9. But after that, years 6 through 10, you're continuing to get cash flow. And then in our current offering, we have another large 10-year event. So it comes out to a 19 to 22% IRR. It's a 3.2 to 3.6x equity multiplier. But the key is we're never pushing the investors out and we're not selling the projects. We just hold them. Self-storage is incredibly inflation resistant. You can change the rents on a month-to-month basis. The only thing that's more flexible in the commercial space is hotels. It's literally on a night-to-night basis. That's the only more inflation-resistant asset class that we've got.
I'm a dentist making 500 grand a year, right? I'm pretty far into my career. I need to do something. When I invest with you, am I investing in the current project that's coming up, or am I investing in the overall fund? Like when I call Nomad Capital, or I call Clint, or let's say I call any syndication, right? I'm saying, I'm going to give you 500 grand of my money or 200 grand of my money, right? Is it the next project coming up that's being built, or is it an overall fund investment?
Yeah, a great question. First of all, my first question is going to be, tell me about yourself, what your goals are for your family, what you're trying to accomplish. And there's a really good chance that if it doesn't fit, I want to be the first one to tell you shouldn't do this. I can point you into a direction where you should be looking for a different asset class or a different operator that has different timelines that line up with your goals. Because ultimately, if we're not in the same boat rowing in the same direction, I would rather have that conversation up front than 2 or 3 years in when you're frustrated about it, right? So it really comes down to what they're looking for. So caveat, just to get that out of the way. If everything lines up and it seems like a great partnership that we could be in business together, we have different offerings. Right now, I'm almost hesitant to put this out there because I know that this podcast isn't going to come out the day that we're recording it. I'm wrapping up. I've got less than $1 million to go on a $10 million fund. So $10 million fund has purchased $30 million worth of projects, which are converting to about $65 to $70 million worth of storage. So on that project, we've got 4 different facilities in there. They're in Kernersville, North Carolina, Lexington, North Carolina, Florence, South Carolina, and the last one is coming up in Goldsboro, North Carolina. So one of those is already done and open. The other 2 are under construction. We're about to close on the 4th. So investors into that fund are investing in 4 different projects across the Southeast, different assets, different geography, great diversification. The project that we have coming after this is a big boy project. It's just on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia. It's an $8 million raise. It's going to be a $20 million project, and that's an individual asset. So it literally comes down to our job is to listen to the market, to look what's out there. And there's going to be times when we find a small group of projects that we can do together and give that great diversity that a lot of people like. Some investors would rather put in a larger chunk and just really understand that one individual project. The analogy is this. When your listeners are looking at different opportunities, the temptation is to bet on the horse, right? You want to look at that deal and be like, here's the deal that we're betting on. I love everything about this. Let's put money into it. I think the smarter thing to do is to look at the jockey, right? And in a fund offering, you could have, like, we got 4 projects in our current fund. You're betting on the jockey, and we're going to ride 4 different horses in 4 different races. And you're spread out. It's a parlay, right? You're spread out and you're even. Your other option is you can bet on a bigger project, and it can be, one jockey riding 1 horse in 1 race. And each of them have their own, market dynamics, and you have to look at it. But it depends. And I would suggest don't change what you want based upon what I'm offering, right? Like, you come up, you talk to your wife, your spouse, your husband, whoever, your partner, figure out what's important for your life, your timeline, and the legacy that you want to live. Let that determine what your asset class is, what your timeline is, and then start shopping from there. Don't just hear my pitch and be like, that sounds good, let's do this. Over time, we all should be diversifying across different asset class, different geography, different operator, different debt structure, and different time cycles. You bring up, something that happened recently. Somebody disappeared with a lot of money from the multifamily space. For people that don't know, the last 24 to 30 months in the multifamily commercial asset space has been a bloodbath. Variable rate interest. The interest rate shot up higher and faster than they ever have in history. A lot of people were not prepared for that. They did not have liquidity, and people took it on the chin, and they couldn't reposition into secure long-term debt. Now, we thought that we were fairly safe from that because we never use variable rate debt. We only use fixed rate debt, and our job is to protect the asset first, the investor second, and ourselves third, in that order always. But what we didn't plan on is those interest rates shooting up higher and faster than they ever have really affected the housing market. Now, what are the number one drivers for storage, right? It's death, divorce, downsizing, and displacement, which means jobs, moving, bigger house, smaller house, whatever. Obviously, death and divorce are still happening, but right now we've got a situation where, and I'm going off topic, but I think this is important for your listeners from an educational standpoint. Right now, we've got 70% of the country has an interest rate of less than 5%. So even if you wanted to downsize to a house that's $200,000 less than your current house, your monthly payment is $1,500 a month more. We got so many people locked into their house that we saw self-storage, especially climate controlled, book up at about 3% per month for 10 years. And now it's like 1.6, 1.8%. Now, the good news is our cost basis is extremely low compared to people doing ground up development. But my point is this: whatever operation you partner with, whatever deal you get in, there will be great times, there will be bad times, there's going to be economic headwinds. You want to make sure you're partnering with the person that has the transparency, ethics, morals that align with what you're looking for, so that when things are going great, you can celebrate together. And when they're not, the communication is there, that you still have confidence in the ability to execute the business plan.
So we're coming down here on time. This is in dental right now. This is a hot topic. Is investing, real estate syndication. Every Facebook group I'm in, every dental event I go to, has an investment person or a real estate syndicator in it or speaking at it. And I think that it's almost always general. It's almost always like multifamily. It's always a thing. And I think the climatized self storage and the way you guys actually have a lower barrier to entry and the actual cost of construction being almost 50% lower allows for a lot bigger margins and a lot bigger profitability on the projects, which I think is really exciting. What is the best way for someone to contact you if they're interested in just exploring or having a conversation?
Yeah, the best way is go to our website, nomadcapital.us. From there, you can book a call, which ultimately will come straight to me. I'll leave you with this. One of the things that I think is important is that when you say self-storage, traditionally we always think baby boomers, Christmas decorations, heirlooms, low-slung metal buildings. That's not what we're seeing in the space anymore. We tragically, in this country right now, the younger generation is no longer able to buy houses. The millennial population, for those that don't know, is now the largest population segment in the country. They're 34% of the population. My question when I invested was, well, is this asset class going away? That 34% of the population is currently using 38% of storage, but in a very, very specific way. They are using it as an extension of the closet or extension of the garage. They can't buy a house that has an attic and a garage. They're renting. When you rent based upon the square footage that you get. So instead of renting a 2-bedroom condo in Charlotte for $1,800 a month, a lot of these people are renting a 1-bedroom condo for $1,300 a month, a little bit on the outskirts, Gastonia or something like that, 12, 15 miles away, and using a climate controlled storage unit for $150 a month as an extension of the closet, extension of the garage. They're in and out a lot more than we're used to seeing. The average is in and out more than 3.5 times a month. So they're in and out grabbing like snowboards, wakeboards, ski bibs, fishing rod, mountain bike, kayak. They still have stuff, but it's not stuff for the sake of stuff.
Keep their stuff.
It's lifestyle items, and they can't keep it where they live, but it's really important to who they want to be and the Instagram lifestyle that they're portraying, right? So they'll get $150 a month climate controlled storage unit because this is expensive stuff they care about. And the access is very important.
It's their toy box.
Exactly. They need to be able to get in and out at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, grab their bibs and their snowboard and head to the mountains. So because of that, I don't care if it's with Nomad or anybody else. If you are going to do self-storage this year in 2025, it needs to be several things. It needs to be safe, secure, well-lit, easy access, climate controlled, and it has to be centrally located. That's why we love the old Kmart buildings. Everybody in that community used to drive to that building to buy their home goods. Even though they don't do that anymore, the residential density is still there in a 1, 3, 5, 7-mile radius. The visibility, the traffic count.
The location's already been worked out.
Of course. Honestly, the dirt underneath the building is often worth more than the building. Nobody wants to demo a 97,000 square foot Kmart. We buy it for pennies on the dollar compared to the replacement cost. And all those same people in that community that used to drive there for their home goods still drive back to the same building with the same stuff and pay us to put it right back inside. So it's a small inverse flow of that microeconomy. But when you say storage, I want your listeners to think it's not the traditional self-storage that you're thinking about. It is a reflection of the increased housing expense that we have in our country.
Well, it's funny you say it the way you say it, because I have a jiu-jitsu buddy that I go to jiu-jitsu with who's in his 30s. He's single. He does live in an apartment, and he does have a self-storage unit because he does have kayaks and stuff. He actually has 2 kayaks in there on the wall. He got these like things that could kind of hang from the ceiling to put them on, and he has a sports car a little tiny sports car, the little Miata that he keeps in the storage, and he goes there and uses it like his toy box because he lives in an apartment He has one parking spot in the apartment complex, and he has a 1 bedroom apartment. And if he went to a 2 bedroom, it would be $500 more a month. He has a self storage unit for 150. He has the place to put his extra stuff, right? He actually has a big toolbox in there too for all of his tools,
Yep.
because he has a garage, right? And that's it kind of became his garage, honestly, is what it became. It actually exactly what it became. And I so see that being a trend, that being used that way. And a good indicator of it too is a lot of the higher end apartment complexes you go to now have these little detached garages built in the driveways, built in the parking lots, that you can pay extra for and have for yourself, which are really just storage units on site is all they are, right?
Yep.
So
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
if the apartment complexes are recognizing a need for this, where they can make extra by having them on site, then the need is probably definitely real. So that's really exciting. Well, it was awesome having you on, Clint. This is a subject that every single dental event I go to, there's a syndicator pitching it, and it's I've never had anyone who's doing self storage, and I know you three. We work out with some of the same guys, with a lot of mutual friends, and I've looked at your fund before, and I have friends who've invested with you, and now that you're working with your dental, it made sense for you to come on the show. Thank you so much. What else do you have to say before we sign off?
I think that's it. I mean, the biggest thing is, I don't care if, obviously my job is to raise awareness about what we're doing, and I'm raising capital to take on these projects. And we want to build a tribe of real estate investors that have the ability to be a real estate nomad if you want, right? That freedom of purpose is going to look different for everybody. I think the biggest thing that I could potentially offer to create value is like whatever you're looking for that you think is an off ramp for trading time for money. I think syndication is very likely a tool that could benefit you. And you have options of syndication is not just multifamily apartment complexes. Pretty much any asset you can think of, any kind of deal structure, any kind of timeline, and any kind of debt structure is available. And we have more opportunity. Like syndication to the common man didn't really become available until 2012. So this is still a very young asset class, and the alternative investing space has not been around for that long. And I think that it's becoming more and more commonplace. We're all talking about it all the time. But a lot of times people look at it and kind of gloss over it without realizing it can be tailored to whatever you are looking for. And there's plenty of opportunity out there to you to define the goals for your family, what you want for your life. And you can find that in some kind of syndication offering in a way where you're not trading time for money. I think that's what creates the freedom of purpose that we're all looking for.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, Clint. Hey everybody, thank you again for listening. Please hit like, subscribe, please share. Me and Andrew, when we host this podcast, we don't do it for sponsorships or any kind of money. We do it because we try to bring information we think is really good to the community. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful day.